Greetings, YouTube. I've been reading about the history of our species and the history of technology for a very long time. I'm fascinated by technology, whether it's Neolithic tools or nanotechnology. Anywhere in that range are things that are going to fascinate me, and in different fields for different reasons. My fascination with weapons is slightly different than my fascination with computer programming or my fascination with structural engineering. Well, if it involves technology, it's probably going to pique my interest to some degree or another. And for the most of my life, when it came to understanding the earliest aspects of our species, one of the terms that was very commonly used, and I can remember this going back to the very earliest times of my life, was hunter-gatherer. That term feels strange in my mouth. Because you see, at some point I came to understand, because of the research I was doing on my own when it came to technology and the development of our species and what was the most efficient way of gathering calories for the survival of us when we were back in the days when we were just hunter bands that, wandered from hither and nigh, was that gathering got you a whole lot more calories than hunting. Now, I'm not saying that hunting didn't have a status process. It didn't have some import to your culture or your society. And it may not be a big boost to you when it came to surviving because you'd done a big chunk of protein just dropped in your lap. But hunting is far less reliable than gathering. Gathering will keep you alive in a way that hunting won't. And you can gather protein. It's just going to be a different kind of protein, like insects, for example. You can gather insects for consumption in a way that you can't hunt insects. You don't really need to hunt them. But gathering gets you a lot of calories. All the plant matter of the world, all the fruits and vegetables that are available to people who are used to living off the land are going to keep you going in a way that hunting won't. And some author I had read started using the phrase gatherer hunter, which is the phrase I use and have used for quite a while. In fact, I can't remember how far back it's been. I want to think like 20 years. I've been using the term gatherer hunter because I know that that is what keeps us going. We are going to gather more than we're ever going to hunt. But one of the reasons I think that the hunter-gatherer had such a status is that the items used for hunting are far more likely to survive into our era than the items used for gathering. Because the items for hunting are hard. Knives, axes, spear points, arrow points, those things can survive for tens of thousands of years. Whereas the items used for gathering, baskets, pouches, things like that, which are made out of organic materials, leaves, vines, animal skins, those things don't survive tens of thousands of years. Nor do, for example, a lot of the early forms of pottery. They're not going to survive, even though it would not be difficult for Neolithic people to create them as needed, even on the fly. I recommend you go check out the channel Primitive Technology. The guy is a genius and has shown how you can walk into the forest with nothing other than a pair of shorts and build yourself the things you need to make it. And he's doing what our ancestors did every day. And his items, a lot of them are not going to make it into the future because they're just going to wear away. So the hunting items are a far more high status thing than the gathering items. Now, this is a very long-winded thing for me to say because I got called on something recently. And I want you to understand that I really do grasp the difference between gathering and hunting. And I really do grasp the importance of gathering versus hunting. And in a conversation I made a video and I was interchanging with someone whose name I don't remember. And they got in my face because they said I was being racist or being at least problematic because I was using the term hunter or gatherer, something I never did. Now, in their head, they may thought I had said hunter-gatherer, but I said gatherer-hunter because that's what lives in here. That's how I think of that form of society that lives off the land. They are gathering, supplementing their survival with hunting. Now, apparently, the most recent bit of nomenclature for that type of mode of living is known as foragers, which is shorter and completely, like, absolutely appropriate. It is easier to say foragers than saying gatherer or hunter, and I will probably use that term in the future, but they mean the same thing. Gatherer or hunter and a forager are doing the same thing. Someone that's foraging for their food intake requirements isn't just hunting, isn't just gathering. They're doing whatever it is that gets them the maximum number of calories to keep going. And that's going to be mostly gathering with a little bit of hunting. So when I say gatherer or hunter, and someone else says forager, we are saying the same thing. But I got called on it. I got not only called on it, but I got derogatory terms thrown at me because I did not use the term that that person thought I should use. And there's a bit of irony in there, if you ask me. So I want to talk about, have you ever been called on something because you used a term that means exactly the same thing as someone else's term? You were talking about the same thing, you just weren't using the same language. Now, I'm not talking about people who are being disingenuous, because you'll find bigots all the time say that, oh, I'm talking about the same thing you are, but I'm using this form of logic and you're using that, when in actuality, they're using that form of language because they're bigots. And they're trying to be hurtful to some minority group. I'm not doing that here. The term gatherer hunter and the term forager really do mean the same thing. And I'm not talking about targeting anybody. I'm not targeting any peoples who still are foragers, nor am I targeting any group that was at one time foragers. I'm just saying that that mode of living can be explained by both of those terms. Gatherer, hunter, forager means the same thing. We are speaking on the same level. I'm not being disingenuous. I'm not speaking from a position of condensation. No, condensation. Sorry. But I am not being disingenuous. So, have you ever been in that position before where two people were talking around each other using different terms while discussing the same thing, and they got lost in the weeds because of those words? That the nomenclature got in the way of the conversation instead of facilitating communication, which is, of course, what words are supposed to do.